You're in your class, scribbling down notes as usual, and suddenly your teacher says something that makes zero sense. You look over to your friend, hoping that they'd be just as lost as you were, but nope, everyone else gets it, and you're the only one left alone clueless. Pause. Does this sound familiar? Sure, everyone has had this experience, and it's not your fault. Everyone is built different. But chances are, if this keeps happening to you more often than you'd like it, then there's something you can do about it. So in this video, I will show you exactly what you can do to finally get what your teacher is saying, and maybe even become the person that explains it to others. The most common reason people feel behind in class is because of wrong note-taking. So ask yourself this: does your notes look like a textbook? Are you writing everything from left to right as you're hearing them so you can make sense of it and piece it together later when you get home? If your answer is yes, then there's a very high chance that note-taking is your main problem. It is what's limiting you from understanding what you hear. Focusing too much on note-taking is not as good as you'd think. You see, since note-taking and writing are both complex tasks, you can't really do them at the same time. So if you're focusing too much on writing, that means you're sacrificing your thinking part. So you may find yourself feeling lost in class, having no idea what you're writing, no idea what you're hearing, but then you tell yourself that you'll make sense of it later at home. What you have to realize is that note-taking isn't just about writing down details to study them later. In fact, that's quite a bad way of taking notes. You should be present in the classroom. You should be trying to understand what you're hearing. There is logic in everything you hear, and there's a reason why that information was discovered in the first place. And your goal should be to find that out. Now, the simplest way of doing this is to write everything down in your own words. So instead of writing stuff down as soon as your teacher says it, give yourself time to think and process the information. Try to compile it in your own sentences, then you write it down. But there is another way of taking notes and remembering everything, and this is the way that I personally use. So the idea is called nonlinear note-taking. Unlike most notes, nonlinear note-taking is very messy. Nothing is arranged. You see topics just floating around and arrows connecting between them. And the important thing is you're not writing from left to right. You're simply drawing the big picture down in a way that you understand it. So instead of explaining each topic separately, you are joining everything together and you're showing how everything relates with each other in one big diagram. The reason this is so powerful is because there is so much thinking involved. As soon as you hear something from your teacher, you can't just write it down straight away, because it is not as simple as just creating a new bullet point at the bottom of your page and adding information. You first have to think whether what you're hearing is relevant or not. Then you have to think about how it fits into the big picture and where you're going to put this piece of information in the diagram that you have. So it's kind of like piecing the logic together in your head and then writing it down on paper to make it more concrete. So this means that you get to think and take notes at the same time. And when you do these things together, you'll remember the information forever. But be careful. Sometimes when people are trying out nonlinear note-taking, they intentionally try to make it look messy. Sometimes people purposely draw random arrows even though they don't make much sense. They intentionally try to create this big, beautiful mind map. And what that does is it shifts your objective from trying to understand what you're hearing back to taking notes. So just be careful of that when you're doing nonlinear note-taking. So anyways, for most of you that feel behind, doing proper note-taking will already solve your problem. Now that we got this out of the way, let's say a thing that I like to think about that helps me understand more. When you feel like you don't understand anything and you can't describe which part you're confused at, that is because everything is just blank in your head. You don't know where to start. So here's a thing that I like to think about. Whenever you're confused and you don't know where to start, try thinking of it in terms of problem and solution. Every information that you hear is useful. Maybe not to you, but certainly to the people that discovered or invented it. And what do I mean when I say useful? It means that there is a problem out there that exists in the real world, and the information that you're learning is the solution to that problem. So the thing that you're learning actually has a purpose. Everything has logic in it. So when my head is blank and I do not know where to start, I try to think of what problem this thing actually solves, why this thing exists, why I am learning it. So here's the first thing that you do. You ignore all the little details and you think of the big picture. Think of the purpose of what you're learning and why you're learning it. Once you figure this out, everything will be like a chain reaction and things will just start to make sense. So focus on the problem and think of the most common sense, most efficient way of solving it, and most likely the solution will match with what you're learning. So that's just something that I like to do in class whenever I'm absolutely clueless about a topic. But what if you're still clueless at a topic and you want to understand it right now? I'm going to share the 3 steps that I use every time I learn a new topic. These 3 steps are what allows me to build a very strong foundation so that I can turn this new topic into one of my strengths very quickly. So the goal of this 3-step routine is to be able to have at least some idea of what is going on and to be able to ask the right questions instead of just saying you're confused at everything. Step 1 is to watch YouTube videos about your topic. When you hear something from just your teacher, that means you're hearing it from only one perspective, from only one lens. When you're learning something new, it is extremely useful to hear the information from a lot of different perspectives. So for example, when your teacher is explaining it to you, it may not feel like much and you may feel a little lost. But when you hear it from a friend, sometimes there's that one sentence that they say that really just resonates with you and makes everything click. So if you're clueless about a topic, it is very, very important to look at it from many different lenses. And remember, when you're watching these videos, only focus on the big picture. Do not worry about the little details. You should focus on the concepts only. Step 2 is to teach it to yourself. Imagine you have to teach what you watch to a classroom and you're rehearsing what to say. Walk yourself through the topic as if you are teaching a beginner. For every word, for every sentence that you say, there should be logic to back it up. You should have explanation for everything. Teaching it to yourself can help you identify your knowledge gaps and quickly fill them. You will see which parts you're strong at, which parts you're weak at, and how your overall grasp of the concept is. Step 3 is to go back to your textbook or notes. Look back at your lesson and try to figure out where you're confused. Chances are you already understand it by now, but if you're still confused, then try to think of the right questions to ask, because now you're definitely not confused at everything. So those were the 3 steps that I do for almost every topic to build a strong foundation. And you can turn it to a strong topic further by doing practice questions and so on. But by now, you should already understand what the whole thing is about. I just want to state the obvious here. If you've done the following 3 tips and you still feel clueless, that means you're missing the fundamentals. Fundamentals are key. You must have fundamentals for all of this to work. Fundamentals and still understand the new things that you learn. So when you're watching the YouTube videos about your topic, try to figure out where you're confused, and that may be a clue to what your missing fundamental is. Here's the simple thing that I do that helps me remember the new stuff I learned for a lifetime. So whenever you have learned a new topic and you have new information, for the first few days, especially for the first few days, you must stay immersed. And how do you stay immersed? My favorite way is to simply mentally walk through what I have learned. So for example, if you're learning a new chapter in maths and you finally get that aha moment in class, what I see a lot of people do is they let that go. They never think about it again until they have to review before exams because they think that they already understand it. But the human brain is weak. You forget things easily if we don't stay immersed. So whenever you're free, whether you're at home or at school or in between, just walk yourself through that aha moment. Try to recall exactly what made everything click and try to explain the whole thing to yourself. This only takes a few minutes. You'll be able to remember the new stuff that you learned for a very, very long time. In fact, you can do it right now. I'm gonna end this video in 5 seconds, so try to walk yourself through a thing that you've learned last week.